Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the Cheerson Tiny 117 or 117, and that's because the distance from motor stem to motor stem is 117 millimeters. This is a 2S powered 10 millimeter brushed micro. It features one of the higher quality cameras in the FX798T, and this one is a good little flyer. You can see I've added a buzzer, and I went with my JST connector so I could fly it with more batteries. And let's get right to the flight footage. Look at the beautiful weather what we have here in the middle of December. This is just amazing. We've got low 50s, no wind, and we've got time to fly. I'm actually in the middle of changing jobs, going from one to another, and so I use a little bit of that vacation time I had left on the table to take some extra time off during the holidays. You'll notice here during the flight that I've pretty much got it tuned, but I think I need some more eye on pitch and roll. I get a little bit of a nose bobble every once in a while when I try to do some maneuvers. And you'll see that punch out there. I do that once more, I believe, in this flight. We're running 10 millimeter motors on 2S, so don't expect it to be twice as powerful as 1S and 8.5 millimeter motors. There's definitely more thrust, there's definitely more speed to be had, but it's definitely not double. You're carrying a pretty good substantial payload in that 2S battery, and the motors themselves are actually quite heavy as well. Those 10 millimeter motors are pretty heavy. But it flies pretty well. I had a great time while I was out flying it. I spent most of my time tuning in the house, which is tough. I crash enough when I'm in the backyard and the big open spaces. When I'm inside, I tend to crash even more. And if you took a quick peek when I introduced the 117, my props were pretty beat up. I've actually got one blue prop and 3 red props because I snapped one of the leaves just clean off. But our flight times are going to be quite long, so don't worry, I'm not going to sit here and talk through the whole video. This isn't actually even a full flight. I think I get about 5.5 minutes of flight time, and I still have plenty of battery left over before I crash out. So if you're looking for a brushed flyer that has good power, good thrust, and it doesn't require a lot of work to get it together, it does come in a kit, and I'll show you a few steps that I took to get mine working. But I think, within reason, half hour, 45 minutes, you should be able to get it together, provided that the most difficult soldering that you have to do is where you have to jumper the board for 2S operation. But other than that, everything else is pretty straightforward. Nope, you see there's a little bit of that wobble when I do a hard turn. And I do a bit of close proximity here and there too. I think this quad comes in around $70, 65 to $70 depending upon the prices, and that's extra reasonable. We used to be paying about $35 for these micro brush boards, and then you had another $20 to $30 in motors, and then you got another $10 in your receiver at least. Then you had to throw in your $40 camera, which those prices have come down dramatically too, and then your props. So 60 to $70 for something that flies this well, that's pretty good value in my opinion, and I'm glad to have one in my fleet. Okay, I'm going to stop the chatter. We'll come back to the desk. We'll have a few final thoughts on things, and then we'll jump right into the very brief build, and I'll end the video with another flight. couple things I wanted to cover before we jump into that build and then the beta flight setup is the weight. And let's start with the battery. This is a 2S battery that I enjoy flying inside the house quite a bit. And this is the stock battery, minus a little bit of the lead, because I did change that out to JST. And let's see what we get for a weight. 31.9, and then my favorite indoor 2S battery, 26.5. And I find that these fly just about the same. So if you're looking for a replacement 2S battery, you might look at this one. I think they do sell these online. I think they come in around $7 or $8, and I think this one does about $7, $8 too. So it's a little bit of a wash. You might find there's minor differences between the two. They look very, very similar as far as dimensions and size. So being on the copter, if you want to save a little bit of weight, you might try this one out too. I would only suggest getting one until you find that you do like it or you don't, and then you can choose to whether or not to buy more. And also, let me get my little stand out here. Tear that out. The machine weight, as I have it configured here, 61.1. Now that's getting awfully close to brushless zone, isn't it? So this one I just built recently. This is the Quadcopter Carbon, or Q Carbon 85. I'll put a card to that right up here. Great indoor flyer. You can take these ducts off, and these ducts weigh about 12 grams for the 4 of them. Nope, I forgot. Let me zero that out. So this is 58.4. You take off those ducts, and now you're down to 46. And you're going to get a lot more power and thrust out of brushless motors than you are these. But I understand if you're looking at this, what you're looking for is something that's pretty simple to get together, pretty simple to build, and it's going to work in small spaces. Once you get to flying this, you may want to move on to something else like the Q85. But I wanted to show you that you might want to consider looking at micro brushless if you're looking at something like this too, but you're going to probably have to build for the most part. I don't believe there's anything on the market, unless you buy a bind and fly from Quadcopter like this. I don't think Banggood or GearBest or anybody sells something that's this size that uses brushless motors. So if there is, please let me know down in the comments. Okay, I think that's it for this. Let's jump right into the build tips and tricks, and then we'll do a final overview of the clean flight configuration. A few things about this build. You can see I've got pretty much everything built up, but these feet, you should be able to slide them up into their little slots and then bring them forward. You can see there's a gap back. And then when you put the grommets in second, that will shore up those feet from falling out. Most of them are pretty tight, but they might slide out if your feet to fiddling, but the grommets will hold things in tight, and then when you get the motors in there, they'll definitely be tight. And one thing I did with the motors that I haven't seen in other videos, I've actually had this kit a while, but I'm just getting around to it, is you can see I've lined up the motors to where they're on each side. The wires are on each side, and then I put them through this little hole, and then I brought them up in here. And I did that on all 4 sides, and I did cut the leads a little bit shorter, but when I did that, I made sure where my side plate's at, that my side plates will go in there just fine. I won't have any problems with those. I didn't want to route the motor wires through the side plates, just because I didn't feel like they were supposed to go through there, so I didn't do that. I've added a buzzer. You can see where I've put that in, and then I've used my Spectrum satellite. It's actually not a Spectrum satellite. It's the Redcon CM921, I believe. Works just like a Spectrum, but it's only DSM2 compatible. You see I used a different lead on mine. I prefer JSTs, and I swapped over the battery for the lead. There's some that'll say that the micro loci connectors have a limited life, and that the JST lives are better, and they can deliver more amperage to the batteries and the flight controller. I don't know that for sure. That's just what I've heard. And if you look around at a lot of people who do a lot of brushless stuff, that's what they usually use as a JST. And so I follow suit. And I believe Benedict and many of the people over at the community at Micromotor Warehouse do the same. The kit also comes with a couple of these little rubber pads, and you can use these on the bottom to hold your battery in place. I'm going to use the low-profile Duralock, and the reason why I do that is that if you just stick that on here, and then you can wrap your battery around with the rubber band, that tends to be a little bit easier than having to hold the battery on there with one hand, while you're trying to work the rubber band over. So I use the low profile Duralock, and you can get that from Fine Tape or Fine Tapes. Not sure if that's plural or not. .com, and you can get, you know, a meter of that for $10 or something like that. But if you don't have a crimper for making your own JSTs, the Micro-Loci will get you in the air just fine. If you get very serious about this stuff, you might consider buying a crimper. This is the one I use. It's the PA09. I think it was about $30 off of Amazon, and it crimps a number of different sizes that we see here. And then you can buy a JST kit with both male and female ends and the associated hardware inside off of eBay. I think I bought 50 of those for about a year ago, maybe $7 or $8. You know, that stuff's pretty cheap. My kit did not come with a pigtail for the camera, and you can see I've decased the camera. That saves about 1 gram in weight, and even though we've got some nice big powerful motors, I wanted to save some weight. It's the same reason why I took the case off my receiver. It probably would have fit in there just fine, but I wanted to save some weight, and that will counter the weight I'm adding with the buzzer, which is about 1.5 grams itself. We've got our sticky tape down here at the bottom. We'll cut this lead relatively short. I'm going to go right here. As you can see, I've got them 10. This is the 5 volt, this is the ground. Let's take a closer look at the wiring, just in case you're wondering if your kit doesn't come with any instructions. We've got the ground here on the outside for the front right motor, and then we've got the voltage, ground for the blue wire, voltage for the white wire, ground for the black, voltage for the front left motor, and then ground there as well. Okay, let's go ahead and finish this up. I'm going to go ahead and solder this camera, and I'll show you this because if you haven't done any soldering before, it's not a real direct science. All we're going to do is give ourselves a little leeway. I'm going to cut this pigtail. Save that. It's good silicone wire. You might use that. Maybe use it for your tiny whoop. Just give ourselves a little bit here. Use my blue tack. And where did my solder go? Get in and get out. Get a little bit of solder on the tip. Don't want to spend too long on that. Now in my case, I want the wire to come over the top of my receiver wire, but I can go underneath my motor wire there. So I'm going to use my needle nose in here probably. Just going to pull these up out of the way just a little bit. Hopefully that's not in your view. Let me adjust here and get a little closer. See very clearly here. If I get this down out of the way. That's our ground. That's our 5 volt. I've pre-10 those. Let's see if I can get this far enough out of the way we can all see. Here's where I'll use my needle nose so that my hand isn't directly in the way. You can do this probably without the use of this, but when you're filming, it's a different sort of challenge. You hear one of my kids walking around getting snacks up there. Okay. A little bit of pull test. Now to finalize my receiver, I always use a piece of double-sided sticky tape. It goes on this way, and I'll just kind of finagle it over, and then I'll use another piece. And if you're ever using these receivers, you can also add a little hot glue to these to help shore them. I'm using the sticky side of the tape to help secure them. Then I'll just twist these, pull the other side off, put it about here. I may end up having to put my buzzer on the top, but when we get to that, we'll come back to it. Oh, you can see I bent that too much. I'm going to have to repair that little wire came loose. Okay, there she is. She's all ready to go. You can see I've got my buzzer here wedged in the back plate here. I've got a little bit of wiggle room so I can still get to the USB port. I used all the red props. The pitch on these is pretty mild, but we'll see how she flies. And I created a little bit of up tilt right here. Just used a little piece of foam tape, not all of it, just a little wedge of it to create a little bit of up tilt there. These cameras are pretty wide angle, so you may want to start with it flat depending upon your flight experience. But I think a little bit of up tilt in my case is going to be increase my enjoyment. Let's go ahead and run through the clean flight configuration, and you get to take a look at that, and you'll see where my PIDs are. I think this will fly fine on the defaults, but I might want to tweak things just a touch to see how things go. Okay, I've got the Cheerson Tiny 117 all plugged in. You can see we're on COM 9, so let's connect. And I'm just going to run through this relatively quickly. You can pause the video at any time if there's something you'd like to see. Again, I'm using the Spectrum satellite, so I've got serial RX on UART3, which I believe you have to do for just about all F3 boards. You need UART3 and serial RX on. We've got brushed for our protocol, and you can see where we've got our center values and our max and mins. I am using the VBAT, and I've set my minimum cell voltage to 3.1. That way when it recovers it should be above 3.3. We've again got RX serial selected and Spectrum 1024 because it's DSM2. Running 8 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz. But you can see our CP load is 15. If we were to change that, it goes above 25 or 27%, and that gets to be a little much for the board in flight. And you can see I've turned off everything else that's default down here on Betaflight. Let's go over to the PIDs. Sure, if you're not wanting to tune yours yourself, this will get you started. My RC rates and my super rates, they are very high, and that's how I like them. If you don't like them that high, just turn them down. Easy. Nothing really to see on the receiver because it's not currently connected. You can take a look at my modes. I use switch arming, and then I use a 3-position switch to switch between air mode, rate, and horizon, and then a last switch to activate the beeper. If we go down to the CLI and we type version, we see that we were running 301, which came flashed on the board that I received. I do think sometimes these boards are coming pre-tuned. I think I've seen a few videos of this particular copter coming pre-tuned, but if yours isn't, you can start with those PIDs and that'll get you going. Okay, I think we've really covered everything. If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the section down below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. I think in the coming year, I'm going to start... Oh, I got some batteries ready to go. We're supposed to have good weather tomorrow. I'm wanting to do some more flying. 2017, I think I'm going to start doing more regular giveaways. I'm not into collecting quads, but I'm always worried about giving stuff away, so I'm going to have to put some serious thought into that here soon. But we'll start to do more giveaways so I can spread out what vehicles I do have to others who might be in need. Okay, I thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.